Hey, welcome to the channel. It's Northern New York Parts, and my name is Eric. And what we do on the channel is we have like shop talk for people that want to talk business on a daily basis. I do Monday through Friday, and on the weekends I kind of try to look at projects that people are going to encounter and try to solve the issues for you and me. So today's episode is going to be on what's going on if we have fuel that has gone into the head where the spark plug goes, or we have fuel now in the oil in the base, or both. Stay tuned and let's go to the video and let's see if we can figure this out. Alright, so the big question is how is fuel getting into the cylinder head, where a lot of times we'll notice that when you go to turn it over, the engine can't spin. And the reason the engine can't spin is because there's fuel in the cylinder chamber and it's coming up against it, and it's what we call deadheading. And basically the way you're going to find that out is you're going to take the spark plug out, and when it spins over you'll see it blow gas right out of the cylinder. And then if it doesn't go there, it ends up down in the oil in the base of the motor. It can be in both places, but for the most part it's either one or the other. And if it ends up in the base, you can smell it when you take the dipstick out to check your oil. It's going to be over full and it's going to smell. And if you do happen to get it to start, if it's in the base, a lot of times what you'll find is it will smoke like crazy. And the reason it smokes like crazy is because now the gas has thinned the oil down to such a thin state that it's able to get by the rings and is being burnt with the fuel coming in. So it smells like an oil burning. So what is really going on when we encounter this? Well, could be numerous things going on or just one in itself. But let's work at this together. Let me get my glasses on here. Alright, so this is a carburetor in the simplest form. You have the carburetor bowl, you have where the throttle, the choke, but don't worry, a carburetor is a carburetor when it comes to this issue. Some will have the electric fuel solenoid on the bottom that will screw out. Some will look bigger, some will look smaller, but let's figure this out together. So let's take the bolt that's holding the actual bowl in place. Alright, as you can see, it's a brand new carburetor. So a lot of times what it is the culprit is right here, and this is the float. Now, a couple things that could be going on. Well, we first know that either the needle or the seat or the float are not operating correctly because it's allowing the fuel to continually keep filling this bowl. And this bowl should never get to the top, in all honesty, because as this float goes up, it shuts the fuel off. As it comes down, it asks for more fuel. So a lot of people say, well, the float bowl gasket is important because it'll leak. Well, yes and no. The fuel in this should never get up to the very top. And what happens is, if the float, let's say, has a pinhole in it, it will keep it down, keep adding more fuel to the system. And when it adds more fuel to the system and it fills this bowl, there's only one of two directions that it can go. And that's through the air cleaner, which ends up going into the head of the unit. And the other is, if the valves are in an open position, it can go through the valves and right into the base of the engine. So it's always going to be in one of two locations, the head, the base, or both. Alright, so if the float is bad, just simply replace the float. But that might not be the only culprit. Because if we turn it upside down, you'll see there's a pin right here. And if we pull this pin like that, take that out. Now, if you look on the very bottom, right here, this is your needle. And your needle rides right in the notched piece on the float. So, let me get this here. It's coming up into here. So you have a seat in there is what it's called. And if that's working properly, as that float, get it in here, as that float comes up, it's pushing the needle down and causing it to shut the fuel off. Sometimes they'll get gunked up, where just taking the float off, being careful not to lose your pin or your needle, and then just giving her a few shots of carb cleaner will sometimes cure the issue. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to go farther. Now, the price of carburetors this day and age from overseas, a lot of times it's just as cheap to go out and buy another carburetor. But for you guys that want to learn how to diagnose and stuff, that's the best way. So if you've got fuel in the base or you've got fuel in the head of the unit, here's your culprit. Now, one way you can avoid this is to put an inline fuel shutoff. You just shut the fuel off somewhere between the tank and this carburetor. That's going to help over periods of time of it sitting and not filling up the head or the base. But in the end, you still haven't solved the problem if you're shutting the fuel off to stop that from happening. Okay, so once we have it all back together, and you can check it before you start too, there's two ways of doing it. There's new school and old school. Old school, wear your safety glasses when you're dealing around this stuff, is simply turn your carburetor upside down and blow into it. I can't blow into it. But if I tip it this way, where it allows the float to come down to allow the fuel in, I can now blow into it. That tells me that the needle and seat are doing and functioning as they should. New school is you have a leak down tester, and that just simply put the hose over top of your fuel line, where your fuel line comes in, and it's a handheld unit. You can pump it up to 1 pound, 2 pounds to see if it holds the pressure. If it leaks down, then you still have issues somewhere with the seat or the needle not coming completely tight. So the best thing you can do is get into the carburetor, shake your float to see if you can hear any fluids in it. Because if there's fluids in it, gas, it's going to settle down. It's going to open up that needle and ask for more fuel and more fuel and more fuel until it fuels the bowl, and then it comes out and goes to the head of the base. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. Don't run these. Make sure that you don't have any gasoline in that base, because it'll make it so thin that it will ruin the engine shortly. Alright, so you guys, Have a great day.